Good morning, everyone. So a few days ago, I was invited to a retreat in 2023 organized by friends of some students of mine on Facebook who's been following my Saturday morning practice. Um, and I don't know a whole lot about this retreat, except that I do know that it consists of many teachers and practitioners who are interested in self healing. And so I was very happy to be invited. It's consistent with some of the work that I'm doing now, reaching out to the greater community of spiritual practice and not just limited to what we do here. For example, to sort of the Western um, yoga community, as I have spoken before. So I want to make this really quick. Probably it's something that I should have done a long time ago anyway. So for anyone who's interested in knowing more about the work that we do, and you can just go to this website, dennykmiu.com, or you can go to the other one, which is the one with the slash video to see more of the Dharma talks that I have done in the past. Okay, so maybe just very quickly um, talk about who am I and what have I done. I came to this country when I was 15 years old. I started my high school here. I actually came as a immigrant with my family. So that was in 1971, and so just kind of spare you some math. I'm about to receive my first Social Security check, so that should give you some idea. So anyway, I started high school in the United States, and eventually went to college and went to graduate school. And in 1985, I received my PhD and started working as a research scientist in San Diego for Kodak. Kodak is not what it used to be. It used to be a huge company. Ironically, I was working on the future of photography, which is digital photography. So, I mean, today there is no other kinds of photography, which explains why Kodak is not such a great company anymore. In any case, I did that for 2 years, and then I got a job teaching at UCLA and became an assistant professor. And then I was there for 9 years. Actually left in 1985. And during the last 3 years, I was also a visiting scholar at Caltech, which is not too far away from UCLA, but it's a very different kind of school, very highly technical school. Lots of Nobel laureate come from Caltech. It was a very amazing experience for me. In any case, let's move on. So I left the academia altogether in 1995, started my first company, and then I started my second company in 2003, and so by 2007, it was time for me to retire, and so I did, and divested myself from my holdings, and started doing a lot of traveling around the world, really seeking my own spiritual path. And about 6 years ago, I met Master Zero, who I talk about a great deal, who was interestingly, before he was a Buddhist monk, was essentially what would be today called an MMA fighter, a mixed martial art fighter. He came from the traditional Shaolin training, trained by his grandfather when he was 5 years old, and then later on pick up Tai Chi. Not the way we know it. We think of Tai Chi as a relaxation technique, but that's not what he did. He actually was a fighting technique, and so he was a professional MMA fighter until when he was about 19 and 20. Then he went to Thailand, and was then became a monk. Anyway, so by the time I met him, he was already been in the United States. He has a temple, a monastery in St. Louis, and I met him. Following him, became his attendant for all his foreign travel. And then in 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic, essentially everybody shuts down. So I no longer travel, and so I switch all my activity, all my teaching to online. and I've been teaching online from basically March of 2020 until now. I teach about 6 classes online a week. 5 of them are in Cantonese. 4 of them are combines different elements, including what we would call Pure Land chanting. And you can, if you're interested in know more, you can go to the YouTube channel. So I've been asked to talk about what I do, and rather than explaining in detail about what I do, because it combines a lot of different elements, and rather than saying that I combine all these elements, it's actually more interesting to talk about from a historical perspective, because all these different things that people talk about now, Qigong, because I actually was approached originally thinking by students by the organizers of the conference, thinking that I'm a Qigong instructor, and I had to go into great length to explain, no, that's not who I am. And then so in our practice, we seems like we're combining a lot of different elements: the Qigong, the Tai Chi, the yoga, and all that. And so rather than trying to justify how we combine all that, I believe it's actually better to look at it from a historical perspective, and how spiritual practice have been developed over time, and it's kind of become this different schools. And so instead of looking back and say, hey, how do we combine these different schools of teaching into one, it's actually better to go back to the origin before it's sort of diversified into this different silos, if I may. Some of these you recognize, some of these pictures you recognize, some of them you might not. I want to assure you that all of them are yogis. They're yogis. They're yogis in different clothings. The original yogis, the Adi Yogi, of course, is Shiva, who some might argue is just a mythical figure. But, it doesn't matter. He might exist, he might not exist. Lots of people believe he exists. I do believe he exists, because I believe in his teaching. So people argue about, when was he even born, all kinds of things. But anyway, I think we can agree that if he exists at all, it would have to be more than 6,000 years, maybe even more. Some people argue that maybe 20,000 years, but that's not important. What is important is that Shiva, who is one of the 3 gods of the traditional Hindu religion, is someone who started the traditional yoga practice, or in the North Indian language would be called yuja practice, and he talks about the energy in the body, the 72 nadis. These are the energy lines. He talks about the chakras, the intercept of these energy lines. He talks about that how there were originally 114 chakras, then they became 108, and they became 7 as appropriate, right? So for us humans, mortals, we focus on the 7 chakras. So that was his original teaching. It's important then to think about the next figure. In this case, it would be Buddha. Sycamore, right? This is the beginning of the Buddha's teaching, and he exists in about 600 years before Christ. So if you really understand the teaching of Buddha, there's almost 90% similarity between what we would call Buddha's teaching and the traditional Yuja teaching. Now, I just, for the hell of it, I put in the picture of Jesus from Nazareth. I believe he's yogi, because if you look at his teaching, it has to do with compassion and forgiveness and all that. That's very, very, at least Buddha's teaching. Now, this Patanjali is probably what most people know of, who was the one that actually wrote up the treatise on the yoga teaching, the Yoga Sutra, and he talks about the 8 limbs of yoga, And in some of my writings, I talk about how the 8 limbs of yoga is in fact the basis for the Buddhist teaching. Now, the person that really brought that meditation technique to China is somebody named Bodhidharma, who came in the 5th century, 5th to 6th century into China. He is now known as the founder of the Chan meditation, which when it went to Japan is a Zen meditation. He is known for the mindfulness meditation. He's also known for the Vipassana meditation. Everybody thinks of these, Vipassana meditation, mindfulness meditation, and the Zen meditation is there are 3 different techniques. Thinking that this is called Vipassana, so everything else couldn't be called Vipassana. This is called mind, and so therefore everything else could not be called for mindfulness. And Zen means jhana, and so this has to do with jhana, so everything else cannot be. Where in fact that can't possibly be the case. Vipassana means contemplate, and this is the original contribution of Buddha, a very famous yogi. Mindfulness, right? You have to do mindfulness in all practice. You have to do Vipassana in all practice. You have to do Zen in all practice. One might specify, emphasize one versus the other, but that's just the emphasis. Okay, it has nothing to do with the technique itself. So you will find that what I do combines all that. There's a reason why you want to do Vipassana in terms of contemplating your feeling, contemplating your existence. There's a reason why you want to do mindfulness. In fact, mindfulness is everything. Mindfulness just means to remember, to check your mind. Where's your mind? Being very watchful about your mind. Zen basically means sentimentation. How do you sit still and let your bad thoughts settle down? So it's like taking a glass of water and just let the debris settle so that you have a drinkable water. Now, these last 2 figures is probably somebody probably not familiar to you. This one right here is the famous Tong monk that went to India from China. Now, he actually brought back a very, very important piece of document called the Yogacara Sutra. Guess what? He brought back the yogi teaching, right? And then finally, this person right here, he's the founder of the Taoist teaching, which came much, much later than everybody else. And so in what we call Taoist teaching, in what we call Qigong, what we call actually is a direct descendant of all the work that comes before. So I just want to say that, because rather than saying that how I combine Taoist teaching, combine the Bodhidharma teaching, combine the yoga teaching, combine the Buddhist teaching, combine the Adiyogi teaching, I want us to understand this from the very, very beginning. It all came from Adiyogi, Shiva himself. And then it became all these different silos, but I go back to the original. And so the next figure hopefully explain why I need to go back, because when I talk about self-healing here, I'm not trying to fix the body. There's nothing wrong with a body. A body is a body. It's just a bunch of molecules and there's nothing wrong with our mind. The problem is that they're not in harmony. And so to me, the ultimate way of self-healing is to go back to our mind, go back to what is pure about us. In fact, this mind is called nama. And everyone who practices yoga in the United States knows that there's a greeting at the end of a practice called namaste. That comes from this word. It means, may my light bless, or may my light greet your light. And so the light is actually the purity of our spiritual purity inside of us. And so when I say self-healing, I'm not trying to fix the body. I'm trying for us to discover the true self, go back to our spiritual existence. And we use the qi as the bridge between the body and the spirit. And so this last figure, I hope, explained that. I think of the body and the mind as the 2 pillars. It's just that one happens to be the sun and one happens to be the cloud. So if the cloud is covering the sun, you can't see the sun. So all we want to do is we want to tame the body, review the sun. And we do that by doing some exercise. We do that by doing some chi development in order for us to then reclaim purity, which is the mind. Once you can do that, the body heals itself. Okay. Now then, if you think of this as a clockwise direction, there's the counterclockwise direction where you actually start with the mind, and this is where we do some of the metta. The metta means loving kindness. Some of the chanting where you focus on your gratitude, you focus on your forgiveness, and you focus on your acceptance, right? So one is clockwise, going from using exercise to enhance the body, discover the chi, and then using that as a bridge to the mind. And the other one is actually the other way, which is start with the mind, the purity of the mind, and then work our way back. Okay, so I hope this helps. I think that the best way would be for you to go and visit my home page, which is DennyKMiu.com, and in there you will see all the other links to the exercise, to the writings, as well as to some of the Dharma talks. Okay, I hope this helps. Thank you. Bye bye.